There's a fairly simple fact: World of Warcraft dies if it gains players more slowly than it loses players. And for most of history, especially WoW's modern history, that's been a problem, and starting WoW has been an absolute nightmare. I mean, sure, Exiles Reach is fine, but it's a completely disconnected story that immediately dumps you into Dragonflight, and when you play Dragonflight, you don't have any context. If you're new, then you're confused. Of course, you can go and do Chromie time, but that still is a fractured experience that fails to onboard people into the world of Warcraft. And you see, I've noticed something. Players who care about the Warcraft lore and setting typically started in like Vanilla, Burning Crusade, Wrath of the Lich King a bit of a while ago. And in those expansions, back in those days, you would level up sequentially from 1 to 60, 60 to 70, 70 to 80. It would take time, a lot of people would just want to level up faster, but players would get immersed in the world, they get immersed in the lore, they'd actually understand that stuff, and that coherent experience built up player investment. Now though, people can't make heads nor tails of the lore, I'd say especially if they're new. And today's Exiles Reach does still put you into Dragonflight, but that's not putting WoW's best foot forward. And that's where the big news of today is. Blizzard wants to fix this, and many fixes are coming, and they're coming this year, specifically in patch 11.2.7. And what these are going to do is pretty much entirely revamp how World of Warcraft is to new players, and there's even going to be a modified campaign that you'll be able to play if you feel out of the loop. I also have a problem. Vercel's V0 and every no-code tool on Earth have empowered a new generation of vibe coders. I've kind of joined them. My editors have actually been making internal tools for our team that previously we'd need an engineer for. There's a problem, a dragon, and that dragon is backend, and my sponsor boot.dev exists to help you slay that dragon. And I'm not even being cheesy. Boot.dev is built by a gamer for fellow gamers, and it fits my weaknesses, right? Coming from C# game dev, mostly in Unity, front-end stuff was kind of like fine and easy to me, honestly, but wiring up databases, dealing with auth, all of that was obscure wizardry. It just isn't really where I had learned. And that's why I swear by boot.dev. Lane and the team have baked the fun of an RPG, so quests, XP, guild style, Discord, that really is an amazing place, all into a curriculum that's laser focused on you getting serious back-end chops. If you've heard of words like data structures, API, auth flows, algorithms, Docker, if you've heard of those and want to know how to use them and build them, well, yeah, this is actually how. Now, you will build and deploy a server-client Pokedex, you'll remake asteroids in Pygame, you'll even tackle job search preparation. And that's the thing with Boot. They don't skip the important stuff. So no more tutorial hell, no pricey bootcamp hustle bullshit, just a structured path that turns your energy to make shit into viable engineering talent. And Boot itself keeps on adding features. You've got the searchable spellbook and constant content drops like TypeScript, which is absolutely huge. And I also have a hack to save you some money. Boot.dev/Bellular, right? Code Bellular gets you 25% off your first purchase. And if you buy the yearly plan, well, 25% of a bigger number is a bigger number. That'll save you the most. And if you don't gel with it, don't worry, there's a no-risk 30-day money-back guarantee. The Revamp new player experience involves reworking 3 key parts of World of Warcraft, which are Dragonflight, The War Within, and Exiles Reach itself. Now, these things aren't like just little level-up campaigns that are strung together. What Blizzard are also doing is restructuring the endgame content of these expansions so that you can actually play that content while you're leveling your character. And what this means is that World of Warcraft is adopting something similar to Final Fantasy XIV's pretty goddamn successful model of making the full story into a single coherent campaign. Because if you're playing, say, the FF14 MSQ, you don't just say, go to 5.0 and then skip to 6.0. No, you play all of the story in between. That's important so players know what the hell is going on. WoW is quite the opposite. You'll finish the Dragon Isles and you'll jump straight into the War Within, but you'll do that without seeing any of the Dragon Isle stories conclude, without seeing any of the real setup for War Within. Characters will leap ahead inexplicably in their plot. Say Xal'atath. Her appearing in the War Within feels random if you've not fought Sarkareth or done, say, the Void storyline from the Fractures in Time patch. This stuff is a nightmare, and to understand how transformative Blizzard's overall changes are going to be, what I'll do is examine what new players will actually experience as of patch 11.2.7. First up, Exiles Reach is being revamped, so new players are still going to begin there, but Blizzard is essentially remaking it with a different story, a new one, and one that will flow directly into Dragonflight. But the Dragonflight you'll go into is a little bit different to the one that you've, well, played up to now. And just so you feel the difference, this new version of Exiles Reach will lead you directly to the Waking Shores by essentially making it, well, a storyline that flows with consistent characters. And narratively, tying these things together can make sense. Exiles Reach is located in Azeroth's North Sea, basically northeast of the Eastern Kingdoms. It's north of Kulturas, it's near, say, Northrend. It's also near the Dragon Isles. That means it is perfect positioning for, well, transitioning into full Dragon Isles. Now, Blizzard have also said that Thrall, Jaina, Kael'thas, and Rathian are going to be involved in this new experience as well. And if you're bringing in a character like Rathian, well, that's extremely important. He's directly involved with the Drakthir storyline, so we know that around the time of Dragonflight's beginning, Rathian's basically flapping about in that neck of the woods. So maybe the Evoker stuff happens, and then he goes to Exiles Reach. Maybe it's the other way around, but basically, these things will flow together. But it's not just him. Kael'thas is also going to be there. Obviously, Kael'thas is heavily involved in Dragonflight's story, and that will mean that for players, it will feel like a single storyline rather than them doing the current Exiles Reach, which is basically irrelevant to the current story, which will mess up the signal-to-noise ratio of the game, that then throws you straight into the capital cities, again with very little context, and then after that you're thrown into Dragonflight, which of course in the current Exiles Reach you won't be ready for, or you could, go into Chromie time, I guess, and just get kind of confused. Now, the original Exiles Reach involved a necromantic dragon plot with a bunch of ogres. Of course, if Blizzard wanted to get that ogre stuff tying into some of the Void, maybe the Twilight's Hammer, they could try and do something like that. I don't think that would really make too much sense, but the fact that there was necromantic dragon business going on does mean there's dragon business on Exiles Reach, which means it will flow into Dragonflight. Perhaps we'll find out Exiles Reach was involved in the Scaleborn conflict. Maybe that's why there's, a dead dragon there whenever we went to the original version of the island. And that sort of thing would foreshadow the Primal Incarnates well, who of course will appear as some of the main villains in Dragonflight. Rathian being there is great as well. He's got connections to Deathwing, to the Old Gods, which also means to the Darkheart, and of course to Iridikron. That's all stuff that could be baffling to a new player who maybe doesn't know about, say, the Cataclysm expansion. This, then, should help clarify those relationships. Now, my question is whether the likes of Captain Garrick and the other Exiles Reach characters will return. I mean, they're already in the Waking Shores, so if Blizzard wanted to make, I suppose, Scions of the Seventh Dawn Diet Edition, maybe they could do that. And we do know some of those characters can join you in follower dungeons, and that's going to become irrelevant because, well, it ain't just follower dungeons. We're also getting more story mode raids. And with that said, let's talk about the next piece of the puzzle, which is Dragonflight itself. To us veterans, Dragonflight may feel narratively scattered. It was establishing many different plot threads, some ended up being relevant, others less relevant, and what Blizzard have said they're doing is essentially a remap of this expansion's campaign to include endgame content within the level up experience. So as you level from 10 to 70, you'll complete each zone's main campaign, all that stuff. Then you'll experience the endgame content that resolves those storylines. And this is absolutely huge for WoW. Of course, it's a structure that does make narrative sense as well. You'll complete the 4 leveling up zones that will introduce the local plot threads, get you a bit immersed, then you'll experience the Vault of the Incarnates in story mode. That's where we defeat Razageth, but, well, she does manage to free the other Primal Incarnates. Most importantly to our story, Iridikron. Now, you'll then immediately be able to follow them to the Forbidden Reach. That's where you'll see them acquire the Darkheart, which is an artifact that's central to the story. Then that journey continues into Aberrus in Zaralet Cavern, which seriously matters. Now yeah, there is all of that Black Dragonflight succession stuff. Can people get over their daddy issues? Maybe that'll get trimmed. Hopefully that'll get trimmed down just a smidge. To me, there are 2 relevant things. First, learning about Deathwing and the Darkheart, and second, Sarkareth. So, fighting Sarkareth in Aberrus introduces the Cosmic Void aesthetic, and that's the primary threat that we're going to be facing down in Midnight. So, by weaving players through all this narrative in their 10 through 70 experience, it essentially ensures that newer players will understand the upcoming dangers, and they won't feel like they're completely out of left field. After Abridged, of course, we go over to Fractures in Time, and that is an absolutely pivotal moment. In many ways, it's where the whole World Soul saga actually starts. Essentially, it's Iridikron doing a time heist to steal Galakron's essence, which is honestly pretty rad. He then infuses that into the Darkheart and delivers the Darkheart to Xal'atath, and that's what directly sets up the War Within expansion. In the world where that's a new player's default level up experience, they won't need lore summary videos because they'll actually be able to experience the content in the game. But at least insofar as our 10 through 70 experience goes, you won't be straight into the War Within yet. Blizzard have said that Farak story mode will be a part of this, so yeah, that means we'll have to finish the job and cap off Dragonflight. So after Veranov's very quick redemption and Farak's defeat, what we end up doing is saving the Emerald Dream. And this bit will be essential as we move forward because players actually need it as a lore foundation to understand the Haranir. You see, the Emerald Dream patch develops crucial Azeroth lore. It introduces the Tales of Elune here, which basically reveals that Elune sent guardians to defend an ancient world tree's roots. Of course, those guardians are the Haranir, who players will then meet in the War Within. Now, Blizzard doing all of this is not going to be a perfect experience, right? But it doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be decently cohesive. I mean, people love the Final Fantasy narrative, but man, slogging through Realm Reborn really is quite a slog. I think what matters here is players get a complete story. But that is actually not the complete story, because there's another element to this, and it's not just the new War Within campaign, there's actually something that'll happen before that. Taking a look at Blizz's infographic, we see the progression of Exiles Reach, Dragonflight, Lorewalking, and then War Within. And this placement of things is brilliant, and it makes the Lorewalking feature make so much more sense. If you're out of the loop, by the way, Lorewalking gives you bite-sized story experiences that are narrated by Lorewalker Cho, and currently there are 3 featured stories. The first of these explores the Ethereals, and that's basically setting up the events of Koresh. All of those things from patch 11.2. The second one covers Xal'atath's arrival on Azeroth and her imprisonment within the Black Blade. It actually lets you hear her whispers via dialogue with Cho, helps you understand her motivations. That's obviously important lore background for people to have. And then the third revisits Arthas and the culling of Stratholme. That's obviously emotionally powerful content that introduces one of WoW's literally most pivotal moments. It brings in some darkness. Arthas is obviously a character that I think a lot of even lapsed players would recognize because of the Lich King, but what's neat to me is that these are not just random story choices. Each one is introducing a major type of threat. Cosmic stuff through the Ethereals, more cosmic stuff through Xal'atath, which is very important for Midnight, but also, with doing Arthas and the culling of Stratholme, they're doing stuff surrounding the light that we know is going to be important for Midnight, because we will go to Stratholme with Arator. So in Lorewalking, Blizzard are actually setting up that as well. And for new players, experiencing these foundational moments to the plot, well, it just means they'll have the context that they need to actually, well, play the War Within and understand more of what's happening, and ideally, also appreciate Midnight. This is pretty damn smart. And I just want you to almost forget what you know. Imagine you're a new player, you've just done these Lorewalking campaigns, and maybe you've then also done the patch 10.2.7 Darkheart storyline, the one that gives you a natural flow into playing the next expansion, the War Within. That's really fantastic, and it means that these lore-walking things, rather than an optional side activity, they really do prepare you to be able to parse and appreciate the story that's coming up. But if you've been thinking about leveling up, there may be a question in your head, which is just, how the hell are we going to fit all of this between levels 70 and 80? That's where there's more good news, because it seems Blizzard has a solution. There's going to be a new War Within campaign. This is kind of wild, and it clues me into what Blizzard, I think, wants to do going forward. So they're creating a condensed War Within campaign that covers the complete arc of this expansion. That means from the opening loss of Dalaran through to the regular zones, and then through all the patches concluding with Koresh. That's a hell of a lot of content. You may think, oh, that'll take like 20 hours. No, Blizzard actually claims that this will take just a few hours. And I think that can even make mathematical sense. I mean, originally, the campaign alone, if you skipped all the side quests and just did the campaign quests, it would bring you to about level 77.5, leaving you about 2.5 levels to grind out via other means. If Blizzard are doing a trimmed version that's focusing on the core narrative beats that are the most important for Midnight, and you're also taking Lorewalking XP into account, yeah, I can see them delivering people from level 70 to 80 fairly slickly. And it means the players will experience a complete narrative from level 1 through to level 80. That's something we've not really had before. This would be a narrative that properly introduces the Void, Iridikron, Xalatath, and more importantly, it will deliver something that WoW has quite literally never offered, a questing experience that actually pays off its promises. Because right now, you do an expansion's quests, and then the story just stops. You would then need to know, where the hell do I go to see the Endgame campaign? And the game's systems actually don't even incentivize you to do that. They tell you to go to the next expansion, to go get more levels. And that means that not only can new players basically not intuit what they're meant to do next, but they'll experience a WoW that poses narrative questions and establishes storylines, but just about never resolves them. Just imagine leveling up through the Dragonflight campaign, stopping once you finished it, and then going straight to War Within. And all the stuff you would miss. And not only that, all of those questions Blizzard posed that were never answered, and that just trains you as a player, I should not pay attention to this slot, because if I do, it's not going to get resolved. So what this is the first time that WoW has structurally addressed that fundamental problem, which honestly is a problem with their player relationship. And I think what's neat is that updating this system for Midnight would simply require creating another condensed campaign, and that's something they'll have already proven that they can do with the War Within. But as for the Last Titan, and the end of things, that's actually where I think it all gets interesting. Having a cohesive narrative experience in an MMO is such a hard problem. One way you can go, sure, is the Final Fantasy XIV way, but to do everything, to do all of that campaign, takes a hell of a lot of time. And we also know Blizzard have said that they're now willing to do things that are very smart for the game in the short term and medium term, even if they know that it's not going to be a permanent solution. So that's made me think about the future, because all this stuff they've done right now is brilliant for nailing the World Soul saga. You'll level up through Dragonflight, which is where some of those ideas form and establish, and then you'll have the 3 World Soul saga expansions. As for after that, well, this new leveling flow that I've talked about here won't really make as much sense, will it? But more than that, it's not like Blizzard could do an expansion after The Last Titan that suddenly says, oh my god, behind the threats of The Last Titan there was an even greater threat. No, that would suck, and they know it. They've actually talked about returning to more boots on the ground stories. So I think after World Soul Saga, yeah, it's time for a bit of a soft reset. Maybe that involves a larger revamp of Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor, reintroducing a new version of Azeroth with a clean slate for new adventures, which would probably mean another new player experience that is built to make that work. All that this new player experience has got to do is set people up to enjoy this trio of expansions. And of course, all the while, assuming Blizzard keep their word, the Lorewalking feature will be updated with more micro-campaigns, which will give players targeted slices of the extensive backstory of this game. So if you ask me, this is what WoW has needed for years, and thankfully, it's getting it. The game's future depends on attracting new people, not just because they want a big internet dick by going and pumping a bunch of keys or, progressing in raiding, but no, actually liking the setting. And I think this restructuring shows that Blizzard understands how important that actually is. But there's one more thing targeted to existing players. First, actually, there is a returning player experience that's going to be set in the Arathi Highlands with Thrall and Jaina, but what I'm really talking about here is that War Within condensed campaign, because existing players will be able to do that as well. So if you feel like you need a catch up and just what the hell has been going on, that'll exist. But if you want that catch up right now, well, you can watch this video next, because it's all the lore, all the story you need for Midnight in 20 minutes.